What's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg, and this is another Chance Encounter.
Hey, what's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg. I'm a commercial real estate guy. I'm from the internet. We're seeing more properties like this being built in front of a house that's going to be torn down soon. I understand that there are power lines that are getting kind of close. What's up again? This is Dan Fredenberg, and that there is a commercial real estate building.
I'm joined today with John Laine. How you doing today, John?
Good, sir. How are y'all?
I'm fantastic because after all, I don't know if you know this, but my very favorite audience member is joining us today. And why is my favorite audience member here? It's because this is a chance encounter where I interview commercial real estate syndicators, and that means buyers, sellers, all those different types of players. And why would I do such a silly thing, you may ask? Well, if you know about off-market private, also known as 506B deals, you'll know that you aren't allowed to discuss those with people unless you have a documented prior substantive relationship. And so that's why it's really important that I get to know the people who've popped up in my circle and we get that all buttoned up because the SEC will audit you once you get to a certain amount of assets under management. But before we get too excited with that, the best part about it is you're going to learn how to effectively communicate on the subject of commercial real estate, but you also find out how John fits into this business. So before we get into your business, though, John, you want to say a thing or two about yourself?
Sure. I'm back into real estate after a 15-year hiatus. I bought my first house at 19. I lost my home in a foreclosure at 20, let's see here, in 2001. That'd make me 32 years old. Lost it because of a golf ball sized brain tumor. Started in real estate, knew that I had to make a hell of a lot of money fast. So I started doing wholesaling from a hospital bed and built out a foreclosure bailout system that has helped hundreds of people in the Pacific Northwest stay in their house, retain most of their equity, rebuild their financial security, and lower their monthly payments.
Wow, that's a fantastic thing, and there's a lot more to that than I often get in these interviews. But before we get into the first segment, which is the distinct motivations, I gotta say, but wait, check your eight, John. I don't know if you can see through your camera and into the user's device, but right about there, there might be this hideous subscribe button, and they really should do something about the. Okay, it's a stupid joke. I just always do
I
it.
get it. Push the button. That's it.
Exactly. But
Yep.
this first segment is the distinct motivations. I've met all sorts of different syndicators and investors, and everybody has their own unique why. But at the same time, I found that they all pretty neatly fit into these five different motivations. And the reason why it's important for investors or syndicators to know each other's motivations, it's because these things, these deals take months. There's all sorts of risks involved, and we need to make sure that somebody has some staying power in this industry. They're actually going to stick around. So that's why I ask. Now, the first motivation that some people have, it's preservation of purchasing power. What's that all about? Well, if you already own a portfolio of assets and the way that you make ends meet is from the proceeds of ownership, the only reason you're going to make another acquisition is if inflation is eating away from the purchasing power of that cash flow, or you're buying at a steep discount. That might be because of distress in the property, or it might be because of a full-out asset crash. But those are the reasons why these people are going to be making acquisitions. That's not where I'm at personally. What I'm up to is I'm trading time directly for wealth. So my entry into real estate started in 2014, and it was building CRM funnels. So that means like selling tickets, mass emailing, courses, ebooks, all that kind of stuff, physical books. And at the same time, I was noticing my boss making way more money than I was because the other bridge of what he was doing, it was flipping, it was doing 10 house transactions every single month, buying, selling, flipping, all that kind of stuff. And I noticed, why am I paying more tax than anybody? So that made me go, hey, how can I pivot where I'm getting rewarded for my time in the form of deployed capital, aka equity, rather than being taxed out the wazoo from income as a high income earner, salary
Yeah.
earner, whatever. So that's what I'm up to. But a lot of people new to this space, what they're up to is they're trying to regain control of their schedule. Maybe that means they want to fast track retirement, or maybe it just means they want to work fewer weeks per month or fewer months per year or something like that. But the idea is that they want to dial back and control that schedule. And that's in stark contrast to this next group. They're just plain ambitious. They're after that generational wealth. They want to buy their entire hometown. They want to make sure that their great grandchildren never have to hold a day job. And that ambition is why they're going to be hustling into their 90s. And that makes them very effective team members. But they're not the only ones who will hustle into their 90s. This last group, they're a little bit different, but they still realize that you need a very substantial financial backing. These guys here, maybe they picked a sector of society, or maybe it's the environment, maybe it's animals. Who knows what it is, but they're making acquisitions so that they can make that kind of difference for that sector of society. So, John, of those 5 different motivations, which ones jumped out at you? Which ones do you think, what combination describes you best?
Is there a box for all of the above? I mostly want to create wealth so that I can help others. I'm at that point in my life where it's about these kids, right? They're nieces and nephews, and yeah, I try to help others, both from a philanthropic and I want to grab as much cash as I can. I have 2 motivators.
That makes lots of sense. Good stuff. Good stuff. But there are plenty of risks involved in commercial real estate, and if you've ever been involved in a 506B deal, securities attorneys generally insist that you fill out this really invasive questionnaire. There's all kinds of financial questions that most people aren't very comfortable answering, but it's to prove that you had the substantive relations. Now, one question in that questionnaire where I just found, especially as a person who's created exams and tests in the past, I felt like that question doesn't really get a reliable answer, and that was the one related to risk. So in this interview, I have my own question to assess your risk assessment, which is a fill in the blank question. There are many popular investment asset classes, but I think blank is too risky. So, John, it could be inside real estate, it could be outside real estate. What's too risky for you?
My own crypto wallet went from 2,000 down to 200. So definitely not. I won't do Forex. I won't do crypto. I wouldn't do tulips, right? I mean, the really, really, really super high risk stuff is out of my wheelbox.
Yep, yep, I love it. I love it. And because you can't eat crypto. This thing kills me every single time. It's not so subtle, but it's the way that I do my segue into where I pull out the Dan Does Deals commercial core competency cube, and we go through the 6 different roles in a commercial deal. You can get your own copy of this from dandoesdeals.com, and like a complete dummy, I don't even ask for your email address. From a marketing perspective, that's the worst thing you can possibly do. Give away your freebie without asking for some sort of contact information. But my priority in this series is making sure that you learn how to effectively communicate on the subject of commercial real estate and commercial real estate deals, because your future in the industry is going to depend on it. But I go through all 6 sides in every episode of Chance Encounters, so that way it'll be really easy for you to print this out, practice it with your friends and family, and get much better at it. It only takes 2 minutes, as I said. So first, let's talk about what a repositioner is. A repositioner is an acquisitions person. So they're looking at all sorts of different properties, and they're doing all sorts of paperwork. Now, it's not the most interesting thing in the world, but you might ask, what's all this paperwork that they're doing? Well, there's a fancy word for it. They underwrite the deal. That means they're doing the math. They're doing the arithmetic, figuring out, first of all, is this property even making the amount of money that the broker/seller is claiming it is? Because Okay, so you need to be able to do that math and figure it out. Now, a lot of people call these guys just investors, and they call financiers investors, and they call sponsors investors. But the difference, the real distinction that makes them a repositioner is they're figuring out how they're going to change the property so that there's more upside. And one thing that's a little confusing about what repositioners do regularly is you're going to wonder, why do they all have financier or investor relations with these different lenders? Because they all have relationships with all sorts of lenders. And financiers, just to be clear, those are people who only deal with paper and money. They are not on the GP team. They're not, full out owners. That's not their role. But the reason why the repositioners always have to be so cozy with these financiers is because if you can get a more advantageous loan, that goes straight to the profitability of the building, because it's just cheaper, and your expenses go down. So they're going to be talking to a lot of financiers, but the more obvious spot that the repositioner is going to look is operations. How can they stop those Benjamins from going down the toilet? But of course, there's a lot more to operations than just unclogging toilets and collecting rent and mowing lawns. Me personally, because of my background online, I've got marketing and copy content creation chops, which helps with vacancy rate issues. And then there's also the CRM side, which is another way to track your inventory and make sure that you've got different automations and online funnels done for that. But oftentimes operations, because commercial real estate is so competitive, that's not going to be enough room for the repositioner to really make the deal work. So very often they'll need to get a contractor team in to do a value add or renovate the units, because that way the next residents will be happy to pay more in rent than the previous one because the place is just plain nicer, and that's upside. But of course, you can spend endless amount of money on contractors. You can gold plate the toilets, but you're not going to get a return on investment. And then on the other side, the contractors, they might use substandard materials, or maybe they'll take too long or something like that. So what's the fix, especially if you're like me? I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm from the internet. So that means I need locals. I need boots on the ground, somebody who can be there in an hour or two, because you can bet that will not be me. I'd still be stuck at an airport in an hour or two. So we're going to need somebody who lives nearby. But when the repositioner has found a viable property, they've done the math, they figured it out, they've assembled this team, they turn around to the financiers and say something like this: hey, I found a property, it's 350 units, it's tens of millions of dollars. You don't have, I don't know, say tens of millions of dollars if you want to lend us, do you? Well, there's going to be one other question on this financier's mind, especially, like, let's just imagine, hypothetically, let's say you're an engineer or a doctor, a physician, surgeon, something like that, and you and your pals want to pool your resources and take over this 350 unit property. Well, the bank's going to say, who's the sponsor, or who's the KP? What's that all about? My guru or my coach didn't say anything about that. Well, that's because they might be the sponsor or KP, and they don't really want to put a name on it. Well, what's that all about? If you want to be eligible for a commercial loan, somebody in the fold has to already own a similar asset. So that means if you want to take over a 350 unit apartment complex and you want a loan, somebody in the fold has to already own a 350 unit apartment complex. On top of that, you need a certain amount of liquidity. You also need a balance sheet among the ownership team of at least the amount of the loan. But if you got all that, you got yourself a commercial real estate deal. So, John, I know that you have that foreclosure protection service and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure, like, as far as commercial deals, where you fit in, what you're up to as far as that goes. But are you on that? Are you on that die? Or okay, go ahead and let
Yeah,
everybody.
so I'm also working on a 10-story reposition. It's buying an old office building, 10 stories, and converting it to a condo development. So I definitely do the big stuff too.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So your primary focus, is it on the repositioner side, or you're sponsoring the deal yourself, or what's the skinny?
Sponsoring and reposition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
And I chuckled when you talked about contractors, because they're essential, and Menacing. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, that's the thing that as I was coming into this business really jumped out is I'm always looking for bottlenecks. What's hard to hire for. And I laugh when I go to conferences or these big training sessions, and people are saying like, "Oh, well, you just hire a third-party property manager." It's like, well, I don't know how well you remember high school, but I don't remember a whole bunch of people saying, "When I grow up, I want to be a property manager at an apartment complex." So that means, like you really have to treat your property managers really, really well. And same goes for construction. People don't want to work in the sun. So you got to, I like to get them in on the deal if it's possible. And then that way they have similar motivations. But that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about buy box. So when investors are talking to each other, they're saying, hey, what you looking for? What's your buy box? What's your ideal property? We're really asking about three things. First one's geography. Where is it? So that means which states, which counties, possibly even which neighborhood. Okay, the geography is definitely going to matter. Second one's going to be the size. Most of my guests on this show are in multifamily, which means apartment complexes. And when you're talking about size, we use unit count. And the reason why it's so important is because you're going to have a completely different team taking over a 5 or 15 unit apartment complex compared to a 150 unit apartment complex. So that size definitely matters. And then the third one is called class. And honestly, one of my pet peeves is when people use the same word for more than one different thing. So I split class into condition and area. So with condition, that means how old is the property, how beat up is it, how luxurious is it, like does it have a ton of amenities or is it really like bare bones or what? So that's the condition. The area, however, it's talking about what's the crime rate like in that area? What are the school districts like? And then, of course, both of them are really about desirability, which means how many cars are going by in a given day. But both the area and the condition are ranked in the same way as in grade school, where A plus is at the top, and then A minus, and B plus, and so on. So, John, as far as you and your organization, I know you mentioned that one building already, but what's the sweet spot as far as if somebody's in the audience and they have it, and you seem like a good fit? What's the perfect property for you, John?
I like B's in A class or in A plus sites. So
Mhm.
happens to be I love old historic, right? If it's 100 years or better, that's my sweet spot. I like the old stuff because of tax credits, but B's in A area.
Mhm. Okay, all right, and then as far as states go,
Oh, Washington, Oregon, that's it.
Washington and Oregon.
Specifically along the I-5 corridor.
Okay, and then as far as unit count goes, what's usually a sweet spot?
100, like this one will be 150 units.
Okay,
Uh,
and is that mixed use or is it just straight apartment complex?
it's actually an unoccupied vacant building
Oh,
that
cool.
I'm turning into condos.
Oh, good call, good call. Okay, cool. All
And
right,
we're
cool. So,
and we're carrying the note. So we'll end up being the bank for all of it.
gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, cool. So the next question I have then, it has to do with who in the audience is best to reach out. And honestly, my favorite part of commercial real estate is because there are multiple different roles that are distinct, and
Yep.
nobody's going to be all six sides for any meaningful amount of time. So we all are really eager to build new teams, give referrals, and basically make it a stronger community. But even that said, we all have our own unique skill sets. So we're better off helping some people more than others. In other words, we can help a disproportionately large amount. And me, because of my marketing and content creation, all that kind of web application stuff, the sponsors and KPs are the people who I'm generally looking out for because they have the foundation where a guy like me can actually make that disproportionate difference. If you're just starting up, then you need a grunt who's going to be putting in, 120 hours a week. But the other one too, because I'm from the internet, is the locals. Those are the ones that I'm always eager to talk to. But John, as far as you go, I got to mention, like, if you have any 506B deals, don't plug them specifically because we got people you don't know in the audience, and the SEC will get sand in there something. So anyway, but how about you, John? Who's in the audience who's just perfect to reach out to you?
I'm always looking for the finance people, the investors, right? That's kind of just and I'm happy to build relationships with people, right? There's nothing I'm doing right now that I couldn't do 5 months from now after a good relationship has been built.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
I'm always looking for investors. I'm always looking for specifically this deal up in Tacoma, a contractor with a lot of experience. I'd love to find a KP who's got 1,000 doors that could partner with me. Like there's it's a new deal, right? There's lots for everybody. It's a big enough deal that there's always pieces of pie to split on.
Right, right. Love it, love it. Okay, great. And then as far as how to reach out, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, especially on LinkedIn. That's where I spend all my time. I got this distinct last name, so that makes it really easy. But if you scan this QR code with your phone, that brings you to the FAQs page of 506BME, which is the platform where I offer the service of documenting your substantive relations with your investors. The idea being is you have something you can just print up and show that it's the SEC. If you get audited, you can prove it's like, hey, this is how I knew their level of sophistication, appetite for risk, and all that kind of stuff, which is not something that you can really do with a CRM in general. But John, as far as you go, like we ended up catching each other through LinkedIn, so I imagine LinkedIn's pretty good, but maybe there's a website or something that's better. How should people reach out?
You can email John at ratracerescue.net. That's our website. The website is actually going live tomorrow, so it's not up yet.
It will be by the
Literally
time this is up.
tomorrow. But John at ratracerescue.net.
All right. I love it. I love it. And the last thing, it's actually not for you, John. It's a public service announcement for everybody in the audience. If you've been watching this episode and you've been experiencing searing pains in your eyeballs and like migraine-like symptoms, I'm confident it's the hideous subscribe button, which you'll find just down here. And if you want to get rid of it, it's free. You just click on it and it just goes away. You should see the one that it's really nice once you click it. And of course, I'm biased. I want you to click on it because if enough people click on that button, then YouTube will start to pay for these videos instead of me. And I think that would be amazing. But the trade-off for you is it just means my videos might show up in your list of suggestions. There's no guarantees about that, but you don't even have to watch those suggestions. Quite frankly, I just really appreciate the fact that you spent this time with me. Just like John, I appreciate you joining me today. This has been great getting to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, it's been fun. I like it. I like doing podcasts.
Sweet. Awesome.
Make sure you 506B me. Any syndicators, make sure you 506B me.
Hi.
Oh, hey, yeah, here's my code. You got your QR code scanner? Okay, yeah, oh yeah, just hold it right in the square there. Okay, cool. And now you hit open in browser.
Okay.
Okay, are you already logged into 506B me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so there's my video. So now I'm already on your watch list. So when you get back to your hotel, you can find out what my core competencies are and my level of sophistication. Sound good?
Yeah.
I love your hat. Real estate's a scam. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
You too.
506B me, everybody.